starting that now. Okay, so my name is Oliver. I use he and him pronouns, and I'm one of the 7th grade science teachers. I teach all of the birds except for the swifts. I'm also a reading teacher, and I'm the restorative justice lead for the 7th grade, which means that I'm one of the grade team leaders along with John.
And I'm John. I use he, him pronouns, the other grade team leader. My focus is on literacy practices across all the contents, and I am one of the 7th grade ELA teachers. I have the honor of teaching all your students, so very excited about that.
So to give you an idea of our agenda, we've been welcoming all of you and each other. We're going to start off talking about some of the nuts and bolts, grading, homework, and our reading program. And then we'll get into an introduction to this expedition and the courses that your children are taking. And we'll finish up with a Q&A. And we also... Oh, John, you were going to do this, right?
Sure. So if this is your first session for the night, welcome. There's a series of sessions you can still join. So you're here at the 6 o'clock for Oliver and I to talk about the 7th grade curriculum. At 6:30, you could join either a workshop on counseling and high school admissions overview. We acknowledge that might be on your mind as we start applying in 8th grade. Or at 6:30, you can hear more about crew and community care, as that sense of belonging is really important to us at 8:39. And then at 7 p.m., we told your young people about this on Wednesday. All 7th graders have our signature event, the Outward Bound camping trip, which is in November. The students were very excited, had a lot of questions. I'm sure they have a lot of questions too. You can join that session at 7 to hear more from both teachers and from the Outward Bound staff themselves.
Okay, so we're jumping right in. And yeah, I just want to say this is it does feel kind of funny to both of us to jump right into with grading as the forefront, because that's not either of our focuses as teachers in terms of what drives us or what we most care about your students. But of course, it is important, and it's a part of how we communicate with you as families and with our students. So we want to make sure that we're all on the same page and being really clear about our process. So on the left, if you look at the Venn diagram, in terms of the way we think about grading, we strive to maintain a grading system in which we value the fact that learning is a continuous process, and that while we do give grades as snapshots of where students are at a moment, that that's not a fixed thing, that learning, lifelong learning, is all about growth, and certainly middle school is all about growth. So grades are based on achievement of grade level standards and not on effort or behavior. We are standards based, and grades should reflect what students know and can do. So that's really what we're looking at when we look at assignments and projects, is what is the student showing about what they know and their skills in terms of learning targets. So when we give a grade, we enter it into our system as a 1 through a 4, which stands for, in the top right corner here, 1 is not yet, 2 is approaching, 3 is meeting, and 4 is exceeding. And then that, in terms of progress reports and report cards, gets translated into sort of the DOE-wide system, which is a 0 to 100 scale. And these bullet points on the bottom right are actually included on your progress reports. So that kind of explains how our system gets translated into the 0 to 100 system. So none of this is new. None of this is a change from last year. This is all just ongoing, but I think it's important to reiterate. And then in terms of access to grades, So there's a portal. I hope that you're all on it already, and if you're not, you can certainly join. We're using the NYC DOE grading platform, so you can access it on your NYCSA account, NYCSA. And that's where you can see grading information, but also other important information like attendance, transportation, test scores, results. So that is meant to be a portal that is useful for you in a variety of ways. If you have any issues with that, you can try to troubleshoot it at this website, or you can reach out to Leah and she'd be happy to help.
You at home, you see the grades and you also see the homework. So we should make sure we are transparent on the homework policies for 7th grade. For math and ELA, there will always be weekly homework. You can catch your child in that lie. There's always math and ELA homework. For math, they're expected to do 80 minutes per week. And that's a combination of many things, both digital or on paper. So Desmos, a platform students used last year in 6th grade, they also use in 7th grade for some classes. There's Desmos problem sets, and they can either do that online through Google Classroom, or there'll be hard copies available in the class. There'll be times where students might want to just finish the classwork assignment for homework, or do the extension, the challenge problems, or if we're getting those projects, do some more project work time. So there's options there, but there is an ongoing weekly reflection posted Google Classroom. ELA, it's similar. It's the 80 minutes per week expectation. And why we do this for math and ELA is, we acknowledge some students have different family responsibilities, different sports, theater, after extracurriculars, and some nights you just can't do that much homework. And so part of that is, the reality. And secondly, we want to work on those time management skills. So you have 80 minutes of ELA homework. Decide if you want to do 20 minutes a day or just do it all in one sitting. That is your child's decision. It's assigned on Monday. Do the following Monday, combination of some journaling, respond to texts that relate to our content, contain some writing assignments or projects, and then some element of creative choice. For social studies and science, homework is assigned as needed. It's usually when there's a bigger project of sorts to work on those classes. All those major assignments will also be posted on Google Classroom too. And now we're getting into the actual classes. A class though that everyone has at 8 through 9 is our reading class, just like last year. Reading happens 4 times a week. And what's really great about our reading program is we're able to put your child in a class that best meets their needs. So some students might need an intervention space to work on decoding, fluencing, more reading comprehension, where others have that that reading stamina, can be more an independent reading space or do some more book clubs. So in this class, they're not with the normal bird class. We put them in a space that is best for them. And those decisions are based on teacher observations. We've talked to the 6th grade team, map test scores, of course, family input too. If you have any question about your child's reading class, feel free to, DM me right now and I can answer that in the chat too privately. The one thing that is different about reading is that reading is graded this year. Just want to be transparent with you all. And yes, thank you. Thank you. One person, I'm so glad someone shouted out Nicolas Cage. Oliver was really proud of that photo.
Indeed. Yeah, smoldering. Okay, so now we're going to get into our content classes and our expedition. So the first expedition of the year, which unites all of our classes, is The Ground We Stand On. This is an expedition we've been doing for a number of years. It's one that we love, and we're excited about it for this year. So starting off with the social studies team, and I want to name and celebrate that we have a big change this year, is that we're no longer have a humanities class. We have social studies and ELA. So that's maybe more typical of other middle and high schools. And it was a long process for us to make that decision, but we're really excited about it. So John is in ELA, he'll be talking about that. And then Sharissa and Susan are the social studies teachers. So you'll see that they're focusing much more on history and social aspects of nonfiction texts. So for seventh grade in this expedition, they'll be focusing at the impact of colonization through the lens of the indigenous peoples of North America. Locally, they're focusing on the diaspora of the people of Lenape-Hoking, the ground that we stand on the land that we inhabit. They're also zooming out to examine the broader and lasting impacts on other indigenous tribes of North America, and thinking about how the establishment of the United States of America contributed to the loss of many North American indigenous nations. So yeah, native history of this land for social studies in this expedition.
I'm still John, one of your ELA teachers. If your child is a Swift, they have me for ELA. If they're into Cardinal, Sedina and myself. Egrets, Janice and me, and then the Orioles, Susan and me. Awesome to work with all these wonderful ELA teachers. So ELA, this in Expedition 1 is very much connected to what's happening in science class as well as what's happening in social studies, thinking about the indigenous perspective. And so our first case study is having kids think about what is my gift. And they explore this idea of their gifts through braiding sweetgrass. Maybe some of you read that text before. They came out recently with a young adult version. We're so excited to bring this accessible text to a 7th grade classroom. And we're really thinking about Indigenous stewardship as students reflect on what they can learn from their environment. And then we begin to think about how our setting impacts our identity. We're going to read, we'll have book clubs reading novels in verse, 3 different immigrant stories of following this character coming to America, and it'll be a lot of personal reflection about thinking about how my setting impacts who I am or how I behave. Am I different at home versus in school and so on? And that's kind of like what's happening Expedition 1 content-wise and for books. Getting to Expedition 2, we think about the ripple effect, how ideas spread, focusing on the narrative life of Frederick Douglass. In Expedition 3, begin again, we think about how do we balance harm and healing as we try to start anew and read a lot of dystopian stories. For skills, what you might expect in English language arts, the 4 modalities: reading, writing, speaking, listening, acknowledging that our students all have different geniuses and express the ways in different ways, that we want to make sure we have a balance of those 4, so students can definitely show their growth and show what they know. One thing I just want to zoom in on, though, is for writing. Writing, it's always a thing about the process. It's never going to be first draft is final draft. Any final assignment, there's plenty of pre-writing, draft 1, draft 2, peer feedback, teacher feedback, to really coach kids go through this process. I'll name now, it's definitely the hardest thing for a 7th grader. They think of first draft is final draft. I want to work with y'all to combat that mindset.
So this is the math team, Matt and Janice, 2 wonderful educators. And they shared this quote about one way that they think about math. Mathematics is the science of patterns and the art of engaging the meaning of those patterns, from Francis Su. So something to ponder. So they are using the Desmos Math 7 curriculum, like John mentioned. It's something we've been using for a while, and we found it really effective. It's also a computer-based curriculum, so you will see some of that at home in terms of the homework. And the units are as follows. They are starting with scale drawings. You can ask about the scale model project that they're doing now of designing a youth center. That's already been introduced to the kids. Then they'll move on to introduction to proportional relationships, measuring circles. Unit 4 is proportional relationships and percentages. Then operations with positive and negative numbers, expressions, equations, and inequalities, angles, triangles, and prisms, and probability and sampling. So that's the breadth of math that we'll be tackling this year. And then here's me and Whitney, my fellow science teacher. We're both in front of bodies of water. And part part of that is because we're really focusing on aquatic ecosystems in the first expedition. So in science, this expedition is all about exploring our relationship with the ecosystems and the land that surrounds us. So our connection to the broader expedition, the ground we stand on, is has to do with our use of the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address and its ideas of interdependence and gratitude. So I really encourage you to check that out and discuss it with your students. It's a way for us of grounding our study of ecology in native wisdom, and also to connect to what's going on in social studies in ELA. So case study 1 is focusing on biodiversity, food webs, and trophic levels, symbiotic relationships. And we're using the New York Harbor and wetlands as our primary example. So tomorrow, students are actually dissecting oysters in class. So if your kids come home with smelly hands, then I mean, they should have washed their hands, but that's the reason why. But it'll be exciting to do our first dissection. And then next week, we're visiting the Marine Park Salt Marsh, our first field work of the year, and we're really excited. So you should be seeing that permission slip. It was backpacked home either today or tomorrow. So all of these things in terms of skills, we're really focusing on observations and questions, thinking like a scientist at the beginning of the year, and then we'll be moving more into scientific method and the process of forming and testing hypotheses later on in the year. So later in this expedition, we're going to add some earth science topics to the ground we stand on. So weather, seasons, the lunar calendar, and geology.
Great. Pivoting into our art offerings for 7th grade, all students take theater. And we want to think, when theater, I think about beyond, just a stage performance. Theater is a lot more than that. So theater is a space for students to work on public speaking skills and confidence, something we think a lot about in crew space too. They're going to explore personal narratives and storytelling, create their own performance in the style of The Moth, if you ever watched those or seen the podcast. And then besides, the performance, the speaking skill side, there is also a lot of work behind the scenes where they're going to work as designers and technicians, learning about scenic, costume, and lighting design in a theater the second half of the year. I do just want to, add a disclaimer of theater, something that Jenna says to our students to make sure theater is like a safe space. No students ever cold called or forced on stage to perform for everyone. Jenna does an excellent job at meeting kids where they're at to help them create, safe risk. For some students, they feel fine doing a monologue in front of everyone. Others, they might just record themselves and send the video to Jenna, or just do a one-on-one session with Jenna. So it's a great way for students to work on those public speaking and confidence skills.
And so in gym or physical education with Frank, they're working on a number of team sports this year: handball, basketball, floor hockey, volleyball, badminton, spike ball, and flag football. So of course there's playing and learning new skills in physical education. And they're also working on communication, teamwork, sportsmanship, and also reflecting on their experiences.
And students are really lucky to have Rick a second year for art, where they're continuing to refine their drawing and painting skills, and there'll be moments to be introduced to sculpture techniques and printmaking methods. Particularly in this fall, they're working on different ways that artists use the human form to tell stories and express ideas. A lot of hands-on fun things happening there.
And just a reminder before we switch off to the Q&A is in terms of the arts, that this year arts are theater and music in addition to gym. And next year as 8th graders, they'll have a chance to rank their choices for what arts class they want to take. It's called intensives. So that's kind of how it works, is we give them, we schedule them for arts classes in 6th and 7th, and then students can pursue interests in 8th. So that's it for the presentation. We apologize for talking at you guys for so long. I'm going to pause the recording now or stop the recording now.